New Year's Day. Always a good time to take stock. Where had the year gone? Where had his life gone? Gone. So many of the old familiar faces. And last night, sometime after the ball dropped, he was on the beach. Boom, 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 the waves thudded, and friends banged pans, and he was handed a sparkler. And then, the long ride home, melting into the night colors. Colors dripped, colors glowed. He saw a bonfire in a field, a spray of shooting sparks, a volcanic sputtering of gold and silver, then red-tinged purple bulbs on a motel pine tree, and red arrows, green arrows, flashing arrows, 2 moons, and a throbbing yellow star. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? And now, standing at the edge of his deck, hands templed in prayer, watching 2 hawks diving and swooping against the billowy low clouds, he was still feeling a little wobbly. This year went faster than last year. The clock hands spinning so fast, he feared the clock might fly off the wall. Even the most humble accomplishments more elusive than ever. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may. Rehearsal is over. This is life. Marlowe's only discontent with the life he was living was the lives he wasn't living. What kind of Mephistophelian bargain might he make for all he wanted to create and the energy it would take to be in 100 places at once, do all the dizzy rounds, every exotic oasis, every bustling town, everywhere imagination thrived. He'd be a champion of freedom and social justice, be on the edge of all that was new. 1,000 lovers, 1,000,000 sensations, innumerable schemes, and at every evening end, slumped on the sofa, he'd empty his pockets of crumpled sketches doodled by his separate self to decipher, consider, and process the collective head buzzing. It would be like after a day in the fields when Van Gogh tried to sleep. Imagine the color behind Vincent's twitching eyes. Swirling yellows with swaths of rose, speckled black with a murder of crows. He'd be everywhere the voice of truth was needed, and he'd track ivory poachers and wax eloquently about the difference between porpoises and dolphins, and he'd help save the vaquita, and at night he'd table hop at trendy watering holes, chatting to film producers, and they would hail him as the king of low-budget humor noir. And he'd talk about biomimicry and say things like, intertextuality is a matter of recontextualization, and he'd drink like a fish and never muddle his words while partying excessively in oft-compromising late-night situations, and it would all go into his art. He'd be a puzzle, a contradiction, a mystery, but these lives weren't available to Marlowe. He had just the one life, so he'd dance. In spring it was le sacre du printemps, but now l'après-midi d'un faun. And while the rite of spring was a serious ritual dance of resurrection and renewal, Afternoon of a Faun was an atmospheric sketch about lusty animal vitality. The original 1913 Ballet Russe production of Afternoon of a Faun was done as an ancient frieze. Pastoral nymphs enter a sylvan glade, arms straight, hands bent down, a glowing blue sun, and in the background, a waterfall. The lecherous faun, played by Nijinsky, pushes grapes into his mouth, tossing the stem. He lies flat, he leans, he sways as 2 flutes and a harp are joined by strings. He lunges at the shyest nymph, sniffs her luxuriantly up and down, and she bolts and the others bolt with her. Alone, he spreads out her pilfered scarf and, drunk in his own reverie, lies upon it and lets his libido run wild. In Marlowe's garden, this dance was a reoccurring event and different every day. Some days the nymphs wore magenta, sometimes riot red. He had only to inhale the fragrant air and recite a few lines of Stephen Mallarmé's poem upon which the ballet is based. Was it a dream I loved? My doubt, a heap of ancient night, is finishing. In many a subtle branch, which, left the true wood itself, proves, alas, that all alone I gave myself for triumph, the ideal sin of roses. Yes, thought Marlowe, the ideal sin of roses. And as the bees murmured in the ash-gold hour, he sniffed his roses. Oh, my tantalizers, you are mine. And he'd see faces in plants, shapes in trees, and everywhere his lovelies, and he'd make rounded moves, raw moves, flighty arabesques, until grasped by the daisy bush to whirl and twirl in a swirling eddy, entangled as lovers. And she was a cloud, and he the sky. Then she was the water, and he the diver. Splash! And they'd spend a lifetime falling in and out of swimming pools, and then she'd be gone. Just another Faun afternoon. As Marlowe, as choreographer, reconstructed this ballet, it became a dance of metamorphosis, and the Faun just one incarnation. In the next scene, Marlowe might be a bird. When he was with his flowers, everything bent and curved. Sometimes the nymph's pilfered scarf morphed into a huge rose petal, where a droplet of water rolled in a single ball, and Marlowe would let the petal envelop him. But yesterday, Leon Basque's set was replaced by Picasso's later design of horizontal stripes connoting a yellowish beach, a bluish sea, and a bluish-gray sky. And he and the dancer became butterflies, and then butterfly fish out on the reef darting in and out of the coral. And they were puppies and guppies, and she was Circe, and he kneeled and squealed, and at the climactic moment, it wasn't a scarf that he pilfered from her, but a party mask. And when Marlowe put on the mask, he heard drums being beaten on a hollowed-out log, and a sprite appeared, an edgier voodoo version of Tinkerbell. She swooshed a magic wand, and burning, sparkling words seemingly calligraphed by some graceful Mandarin hand sputtered in the air. An invitation. Party at Smarty's, 4401 Serenity Road. Marlowe smiled. It was swing time at the potentate's pad. Marlowe liked reduplicated words, pell-mell, hurly-burly, where the second syllable was an echo of the first to give more fullness. And it had already been a whirly-twirly, twirly-swirly day. But in the New Year's Eve pitch black, as he entered Smarty's party, the word that jumped to mind was harum-scarum. Torches were lit, and ghosting about at the bar was the poet of the hour, Mallarmé, and his partner in this crime, Claude Achille Debussy. In the corner was Vasily Kandinsky, contemplating pure color and form, and fawning over the great stone face, Buster Keaton. Oh, Buster, don't the moon look dirty tonight? There was Bob and Bing and Dorothy L'Amour. Bob said, lips only sing when they cannot kiss. Bing added, and whoever loved that loved not at first sight. Dorothy wasn't sure if he meant her or Bronislava Nijinsky, her face painted as a comic fright mask as she appeared in the 1922 photograph by Man Ray. A hot cookie, but spooky. She said, I do love these canned American beans. Try some? Grabbing a forkful was Guillaume Apollinaire, busy mimicking French symbolist writer Alfred Jarry, who referred to himself using the royal we, and called the wind that which blows, and the bicycle he rode everywhere that which rolls. Jarry carried a loaded revolver, and in response to a neighbor's complaint that his shooting endangered her kids, replied, "If that should ever happen, madame, we should ourselves be happy to get new ones with you." Apollinaire, sampling the beans, beamed. His last words were to ask for a toothpick. Everyone chuckled but the great impresario Sergei Diaghilev, who was worried and confessed to Marlowe that he was most scared of boring the audience. They demanded new sensations. Every season they became harder to please. In the pool splashed an actress in a mermaid costume whose era had passed, whom Bing nicknamed Princess Shalmar, a fallen angel with advanced tastes who'd had too many of her signature drink, the Blue Ruin. Rumor was that she was down to her underwear after decades of high living and piles of unpaid hotel bills. She sighed. "We were all beautiful once, and like flowers, we did not know our beauty." Glass tinkled, and then a voice, like a B-movie Old Testament prophets, came from the shadows. Ezra Pound, fascist, anti-Semite, possibly a traitor, bugged out mad. Although, in the 60s, he allegedly admitted to Allen Ginsberg that the anti-Semitism was the greatest mistake of his life. Still, gray olive leaves beneath a rain-cold sky. Oh man, it's not like I'm going to invite him to my house, but homage must be paid. It was Marlowe's host, Smarty, a.k.a. Art Smitten. Art Smitten wore a mitten, a single gold glove. Embroidered on his glove was love, set off by silver sequins. Art sold countless prints of this image, not to mention posters, postcards, t-shirts, mugs, puzzles, and paintings. It was love, 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 the world round. The glove was bigger than Banksy in Britain, way, way bigger than Weiwei in Beijing. On the Yangtze, the glove was king. They didn't want Art's shirt, didn't want his shoes, didn't really want him. When the glove flew first class and he flew coach with the new narrow seating, Art knew it was all over but the smolder. His first rule, make it until you fake it. And he was faking it. And he had to change. And he was now bending Marlowe's ear about the new imagiste, words that paint and painted words. His new work would be more rough and tumble, maybe a bit scary, and he was considering changing his name to Art Primitivo, which led to a debate about how high is too high, and when is too high just high enough. But then it all disappeared, and Marlowe was back in his garden, where, upon sober reflection, doubt crept in. Marlowe, cosmic eye, backyard shaman, do-it-yourself mystic, who believed, like Joseph Conrad, in the subtle but invincible conviction of solidarity that knits together the loneliness of innumerable hearts. Marlowe was a witness, a sage, a decipherer, a chronicler, a comforter, a conjurer, a trumpeter who would rhapsodize, poetize, crystallize, and sometimes scandalize by finding old myths in the new and new myths in the old. But in reporting is responsibility. His responsibility was to be accurate and to tell a story plainly. Clear ideas, clean resolution, precision, brevity, clarity. A vague communication is no communication at all. But nothing was clear. It was a murky time, hard to breathe, hard to process the craziness that oozed under the mat. hot wax Walmart mom. Jihadist explodes homemade bomb. And everywhere the attitude was with them. WIIFM. What's in it for me, baby? On TV, Mr. Twister twisted the news, but his twist was not true, according to his sister Twister on Channel 2. Who to believe and what to do. He heard, pity the butterflies, pity the bees, the pollinators are pooping out, and the planet's roasting. He heard, to keep toasters toasting and butter on our roll, more plutonium, more coal. Under it all, the inane crawl. Creepy things, creepy people, everywhere the creep. And then one day, we are the creep. Life was full of yearning, aching, twisted sheets and wretched discoveries. Everywhere exhaustion. The only question, what to do with all the information. To everything a season. A time for this, a time for that. A time for surprise, spontaneity, gaiety, energy, creativity, and deep introspection. A time to shine light on the cave walls of the brain, to glimpse ancestral scrawls. A time for a skid down id row to get to the dark heart of things. The world felt old, heavy, fragile, battered, hot, fragmented, too noisy to beam down clear messages from the firmament. He heard the crack of forked lightning, saw a flash of sheet lightning. His hair stood on end, and in a blaze of guilty insight knew he would have been one of those who pranced naked, tossing gold glitter in front of the golden calf, and would have thought it wonderful. Marlowe pined for something half forgotten, and had a vision of Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, busted with strange fire in the temple. According to Leviticus, Nadab and Abihu got smote by Yahweh's angry bolt. But in Marlowe's apparition, Moses smuggled his nephews out by boat. Prodigal offspring on the lam, Hurleywains doomed to haunt lonely lands, armed only with 2 glowing coals in a tin can. On the river they met waifs and strays, which begat the sons and daughters of joy. They were prayerful and entreated earnestly, and they loved their will-o-wisp fire. The fire was holy. In the holy was magic. In the magic was mystery. In the mystery was dance. In the dance was the lover. And in the lover's flame they burned. And so these love-mad rogues became the tribe of Harlequin, patched together, always mending tears and rips while clutching to the belief that their fire was sacred fire. Gifted, talented, often unappreciated, and often left to forage and beg like so many of the artists Marlowe knew in the middle of the second decade of the 21st century. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Useless, meaningless, hollow, and still Harlequins danced. Temporary, transitory, fleeting, and yet life was so beautiful. They danced to patch their souls. They danced to patch the planet. Marlowe believed these Harlequins were his ancestors and yearned for their secret temple where he would encounter these blessed clowns, acrobats, singers, dancers, comics, and storytellers. A ragtag and bedraggled tribe of nomads spreading mirth, a twitter and a glow. Conrad's Charlie Marlowe, on his voyage down the Congo River, met a Harlequin cobbled together with clothes of brown holland cloth, with blue, red, and yellow patching. Our Marlowe's clan, who gathered where the river met the sea, would exhibit a more Picasso pink period comedy dell'arte flair. The way was not easy for the uninitiated to find, but the intrepid few who'd passed through a series of irregular right angles where the strange words and odd markings on the sanctuary gate were almost rubbed away. Marlowe climbed 9 steps and entered through a white door. Inside, rose petals were spread on green leaves, and the altar was dressed with purple violets next to a bowl of tangerines. Lavender light flickered on abstract tapestries that seemed to encourage absurd action, and out the open window, gulls tumbled in flashes of white, their cries mixing with the sound of sea crash and feral templed cats fighting over scraps. Marlowe adorned a blue mask with the slit of his right eye divided by a zigzag. Transcribed around the mask edge, "Awake, ye muses 9, gather about me, O cosmic transcribers." There was no text read, no magical incantation, only love's intoxication, and after painting his body with colors made from egg yolk and pigments of plants and special soil, Marlowe danced with palms spread upwards in front of the fire. It popped and hissed and animated vitality as if a tremor of life ran through it. Odd flames, red, purple, carmine, apple green, gold, blue-violet with dashes of orange like the tail of a comet, crimson, crackle yellow, and vermilion. Some things in the fire frightened him. He saw white rocks, pink mornings, what might have been, what ought to have been, none of it mattering now. He'd wandered off the reservation years ago. Ah, the little half-said thing, and the unsaid thing, and all the things for which he'd too easily sell his soul if tempted, and all the unkind rumors brooded about, true and untrue. But, like Philip Marlowe said, there is no trap so deadly as the trap you set for yourself. Fortunately, Marlowe was pre-bended for bliss and heard clear flutes and clear singing, like simple notes of a bird call, like cantejando, and he saw himself gathering words, like a bird building a nest, and like a missel thrush feeding on the berries of the mistletoe. His words would become bird songs, and he the passionate lyricist of love. Now, half man, half brute, more animal than not, the scenery changed to somewhere tropical, steamy, Eden-like. A dark blue space sparkling with dew and starlight, a burst of yells, a pent-up, mysterious frenzy, witchmen wearing antelope horns, and Marlowe shouted back, "I got my ways, I got my means, I am the love machine, spick and span and ready to roll." This aroused a cheer. Another curtain was raised, and in front of him, his fellows, the age of pathos players. The traveling troupe looked a rough bunch and spoke a patois known only to them, paupers with their own patter. There was Natty Jack, that slick papa who once played in Duke Ellington's band, So Debonair, So Devil May Care, and on his arm, Squeezable Susie, she that made men's hearts go boom. And on his other arm was Big Baby, like a feather bed with pillows a lot of mama. There was pretty Miss Maya, who walked the high wire, and a bevy of buffoons, all masters of their crafts. The boss, a paltry fellow named Pajak, who everyone called Patch, seemed as excited as a cat at a mouse show and greeted Marlowe as if he were their new sage. "What say you, maestro?" Marlowe, always ready for improvisation, peered into the distance. "In the beginning was the Word." But nobody at the studio could see a movie in it. A dance? Maybe. We need a libretto, a plot, a boy, a girl, a magic spell, a wishing well, a chance glance, a cha-cha dance, a cupid trance, ants in the pants, a rapid advance, a vigorous prance, a jet to Paris. A familiar voice, "Merci, oui, oui. But France is cold, my tail will freeze. Give us palm trees, please." It was the mermaid, Princess Shalmar. And Marlowe again heard the scenery moving on creaky pulleys, and then the lights dimmed, and when they came up again, he was back at Smarty's. Smarty's guests were gathered close as he danced on a table acting out the parts. We're in Bonga Bonga, a foreboding atoll paradise. Yellow doves, tall totems, a distinctive mise-en-scène, stark lighting and jagged architecture, nervous strings. Enter Mr. Boots, a happy cat garlanded with a rope of rats, descendant of the feral cats who once roamed the ancient love temple. Mr. Boots meets Buddha behind the house, and surprise, Buddha is a mouse. Poor Buddha. Mr. Boots eats him. His vice was mice, but then, bam! Mr. Boots sees the light. No more vivisection, no more evisceration. Mr. Boots radiates compassion, but what to do with all the freaky information? Enter the It Girls from the Ballet Bonga, the pride of all Oceania. Nita, Lita, Vita, Zita, and Rita. They move aside when the principal ballerina, Tati, appears like a bird. A bird is not always in flight. When it is still, it is very still, but you know what it can do. Her sharp teeth, her whipped tongue, and in a red leotard and a pink tutu set against a drifting yellow void, Tati rules. Marlowe drifted to the bar, thirsting for a blue ruin. Bob and Bing claimed an early tea time and had buzzed off. In their place, Sam Bunny, Mr. Funny, and Lester Bester, court jester. Bottom line, a lover gets only so many roles, and a joke needs the right number of beats, especially after their last stinker sparked a fuse. The conversation went like this. Sam, here's the setup. A rat chews a wire in Cincinnati, and Chicago goes dark. One thing leads to another, and it all leads back to us. We bail to where it's all coconuts and sea breeze. Then we fall for the exotic Tati. She's the caterpillar's kimono, the pussy's meow, and the butterfly's boots rolled into one. But won't give a couple mugs like us the time of day. You sell your soul to the soul merchant, played by Buster Keaton, and in exchange, you're jumping and leaping like Nureyev. She starts to look your way, but then she starts looking at me when Kandinsky gets himself painted in a corner and I help him out. Yeah, and while I'm sporting piebald spots, what are you doing, Lester? Selling shrunken heads to tourists? Nah. Me and a certain mermaid are selling love potions. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang, and doing very well, thank you very much. And she and Buster get hitched. What about my soul? Do I get it back? Don't worry, Dr. Faustus, it was fake. Yeah? And which one of us gets the dame? Sam? That's why the audience buys popcorn, to find out. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang. Marlowe had wanted to see what was on his brain's cave walls, and now he had seen, and he didn't know if he should be mortified or embrace this lost fragment as a treasure. It was apparent he had no ideas, only vague, dark thoughts that made him laugh. He recalled an afternoon a few weeks earlier with Art Smitten, discussing a mutual buddy who collected paintings of dogs dressed as generals and British lords, and was now in jail. Drunk on the roof, he texts his ex-wife, "They'll never find me here." She hands the phone to the cops. Art visualized the tableau as a large-scale photograph. Urban angst meets technology. 5 feet by 5 feet on nice paper. 25 grand. Later at a gallery, Art showed Marlowe a photograph of a tennis match. So what? Marlowe didn't get it. See? Art asks, don't you see? Marlowe didn't see. And then he did. The same man, the photographer, was sitting in every seat in the stands. He'd taken thousands of shots to get this composite. A vision? A gimmick? or just madness. Whatever. You gotta go big, and you gotta be good. Marlowe, inspired, visualized a 40s Chandler-esque tableau, a crime scene in which he played all the characters, the victim, the cops, the looky-loos, even the tabloid blonde. Then he showed Art a book of photos by Baron Adolphe de Meyer, who, in 1912, photographed Nijinsky in Paris. How could someone make a flower in a glass so striking? Art marveled at washed-out light on long-gone beauties, Gloria Swanson and Anne Pennington, and Anne Andrews in a lace wrap with fur trim, and another bygone star in ribbons and white chiffon and feathered gloves that went above the elbow. And there was Charlie Chaplin, posing for Vanity Fair magazine in 1921. Cecil Beaton dubbed de Meyer the Debussy of photography. Marlowe said, "Art as a religion is different than art as merchandise." Smarty was reluctant to leave the world of shared meaning behind, and it was tough for him to let go of the notion that anything leading away from commoditization is madness, but dreamed of producing a work commensurate of his ego. Was backlighting a rose in a fruit jar the path forward? Was it time for a rainbow-hued interlude with puppets of papier-mâché set against a sky of gold and gray? Was it time for marionettes dangling cigarettes reciting T.S. Eliot? He wasn't sure. Not at all sure. And, as Eliot put it, it is impossible to say just what I mean, but as if a magic lantern threw the nerves in patterns on a screen. That's when Marlowe told Art how the face that fits the shape of the mask can become free beneath the mask, and how a veil can reveal another veil, suggesting the delight of endless veils for endless days, with the sly promise that anything could happen at night. By this, he meant the Faun dance. It scared Art until Marlowe jabbed his finger in the center of Art's forehead, and the epiphany occurred. Art hadn't been the same since, hadn't looked back, and now it was Marlowe who was wavering. Marlowe's dream was like poetry. He loved it so and knew there was nothing in it. Like moonlight on a lost river, and like a heartbroken lover, he would probably drown with the moon slipping through his fingers. How could it not come to ruin? Oh God, what would they say of such a fool? But it was a time for pathos, a time to consider the suffering of others. Would there be an end to suffering? No. But we must all do what we can. That is our duty, beauty. And there was still the question, what to do with all the information? And what better to do than to make art? To elevate the conversation, or lower it, sometimes even better. At this point, his soliloquy was violated. Ding ding, elevator up, top floor, bonga bonga. That's you, Marlowe. Jesus, Art, you scared me. But what do you think? I think it's not always serene on Serenity Road. Marlowe, you have no idea. Art led Marlowe into his splendid grotto. I am almost afraid to sit on this stone. Marlowe concurred. It can be damn unsettling when the spirit flies elsewhere to commingle with shadow folk, no doubt. Art rubbed the stone. Yeah, like the dance of the red skirts, the red like a flickering flame, and the dance of the little bells, where the unpardonable and the unspeakable are bathed in healing balm, and we drink from old jars from Egypt, the seals of the jars still unbroken, and then Prokofiev and his oranges stained like a sunset. Or Eric Satie. I know, Art, I know. Some days I help Picasso and Stravinsky and Messine dream up Pulcinella. Some days I just listen to Vernon Duke play piano. They wandered arm in arm into Art's studio. On an easel, a blank canvas. A tiki torch with a leaping flame shadowed on the canvas, like a metaphor for all to come, for all that had been, for infinite creativity. So, Marlowe, coming to Bonga Bonga? With you? I don't know. Don't let the cannibals scare you. Charming people, really, once you get to know them. And what is Sam Bunny without Lester Bester? What do I do, Smarty? Book Airbonga or click my heels? Art stepped forward, pressed his finger against Marlowe's forehead. You stick your brush in the paint pot and dance. Marlowe smeared on a swath of blue. Inside the blue, he rendered a yellow door, then a black key. The door opened to screams and horns. His wife kissed him. It was midnight. He was on the beach, peering through fog and sparklers. And he thought, artists are holy when they make art, or at least most themselves. And looking out to sea, Marlowe gave thanks. That's when his wife took the key from his hand, and then they were driving, and all was pinwheel lamplight spirals and tired tracks shimmering on asphalt from purple to sea red. And in his head, he was still Nijinsky. All rivers run to the sea, and yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. The wise and foolish end the same. That's the great cosmic joke. But always one must dance, and each generation must dance in a new way. All is vanity, but one must rejoice in the work that is our portion. And in his New Year's garden, Marlowe rejoiced as the afternoon dissolved into golden dust. After the rain, gold glistened on wet rocks, and solemn light blanketed the olive tree, turning it from gray to tremulous silver. Oh, convulsive beauty! Oh, compulsive desire! Oh, white wings, white butterflies piled one on top of another, as flower must fall upon wilting flower, rose upon rose until the red shower inflames all. Is it sin which makes the worm a chrysalis, and the chrysalis a butterfly, and the butterfly dust? No, this is the dance of life, and our music is an echo of a song old as the sea. And for Marlowe, it was a song about the bee's soft belly and the blush of the rose petal. And Marlowe was dancing, and his roses were dancing, and the lover was there. And he was the setting sun, like a glowing orb, and she the azure sky. And he was a bird, and she was the nest. And then they were goats on the goat path, and then she was gone. L'après-midi d'une faune. And his New Year's resolution? More of the same. Much more, he hoped. Baby, Grace, O God, go we.